You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 553, Barge of the Dead.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Amy Nelson. I have the great honor to be sitting in for Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we do a bit of soul-searching, picking apart an episode of Star Trek in search of the morals, meanings, and messages. And once we've looked at all the symbols, we ask ourselves if it stands the test of time.
This week, Barge of the Dead, the one where B'Elanna dies, and she has such a great experience, she wants to do it all over again. Amy, welcome to the show. We are all honored to have you sitting in for Norman Lau this week. What a pleasure to have you, and for anybody in our audience who may not know, please tell us what you do in the Trek world.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I am truly honored. Norm, thank you for asking me. And for me to be reading, I think if you've listened to this podcast, Morals, Meanings, and Messages, I almost lost it. This was so important to me. I've been listening to you since 2015, started with TNG. And anyways, so I also podcast, and so am in your circles. We have known each other for quite a while. Yeah. Of course, attending conventions and the cruises together. So I podcast over on BQN on All Good Things, and we have a YouTube show, a morning show, talk show called The View Screen, and we just finished our second season. And I am also on Union Federation on Fandom Podcast Network. So sort of a little bit everywhere. Yeah.
You have really made your fandom flourish, and I love that.
Yeah.
So if people are looking for you, is it bqncollective.com? I forget the URL.
Oh, yeah. bqnpodcast.com.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. All right, bqnpodcast.com. Look for Amy and all of our mutual friends over there. And I tell you what, look, now you're part of the Mission Log family, so I guess we have to get you a T-shirt that says Morals, Meanings, Messages.
Oh my gosh.
Something to that effect.
Yes, please.
We have to make it happen. All right. Well, while we figure out what that design will be, Amy, if you could share with folks how they can get in touch with us.
We'd love to hear from you. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Find us on Facebook at Mission Log Pod and Threads at Roddenberry Podcast. The conversation always continues in the Mission Log Discord with nearly daily live events and 24/7 chat about the topics you love. Get your invitation to our private server by joining patreon.com/missionlog. While you're at it, one of the most important ways to help the podcast you love is to leave a 5-star rating and a review at Apple or your favorite podcast platform. Always remember, your comments could be used on the show.
And certainly not in a bad way, in a fun, creative, constructive way.
Of course.
Right.
And now here's John with this week's trivia.
Why, thank you for that. All right, Barge of the Dead. We have a story by Ronald D. Moore and Brian Fuller. Hey, remember when Ron joined the team over at Voyager and wrote Survival Instinct? Well, don't get used to his company. Here we are at the second and final of Ron's contributions to Voyager, and this is actually the last of his contributions to the Star Trek franchise overall. Now, it is interesting that he had developed this story back in his time on DS9 as a vehicle for Worf, but Ira Steven Behr didn't love it. Plus, it was too much. It would be the budget and the timing. None of that would have worked out. So it took quite a bit of retooling. He brought the story over to Voyager, And that is where we get our teleplay credited to Brian Fuller on his own here. And, well, we all know that he is part of the staff, and one of the most recent of his stories that we covered here on Mission Log was Relativity. The episode was directed by Mike Vehar, and we actually haven't seen Mike's name in the credits in quite a while. He easily switched between TNG, DS9, Voyager, and later he'll jump over to Enterprise. But you need to go back to the first half of Season 5 with Latent Image for the most recent of his Voyager episodes that we have covered. Now, appropriately, perhaps, that is another episode with a deep dive into psychology. Little familiar thematic ground here. All right, let's meet our guest stars. One of the Klingons that we meet on the way to Gre'thor is Hijka, the one with the branding iron, played by Sherman Augustus. Now, Sherman is pretty imposing on screen as a Klingon, and that might be because, well, before he was an actor, he played both college and professional football. By the late 80s, he was dropping into films and TV guest roles. He had a recurring role on Into the Badlands and a very long 90-episode run on The Young and the Restless. Kotar is the mythical Klingon who destroyed the gods and was punished with the job of ferrying the dead to Gre'thor. He is played here by Eric Pierpoint. Now, Eric is not new to Trek, and in fact, he has appeared on both TNG and DS9 up to now. On the former, he was Yaren Ambassador Vaval in Liaisons, and in the latter, he was Sanders in For the Uniform, and we will see him in Enterprise again, both as an alien and as a human in different roles on that show. Brok-Tan is a Klingon who is on his way to Gre'thor, and he's played by John Kenton Shull. John is also a returning player, and he is not at all new to playing Klingons. He donned the ridged forehead in TNG's Firstborn and again in DS9 in Return to Grace. And sure, he has appeared in other guises too. He was a Bajoran on the DS9 episode Shakar, and he was one of the indigenous aliens in the Voyager episode Basics Part 2, and we will catch him yet again in another role on Enterprise. And I wouldn't blame you if you didn't recognize B'Elanna's mother, Miral, played here by Karen Austin. The only other time we've seen Karen on Star Trek was way back in DS9's 5th season in Nor the Battle to the Strong. She was playing a human in that one as Dr. Kalandra. Karen has been working consistently since the late 70s, going all the way back to an early guest role on Happy Days. And one of the more prominent roles that she's had in her career was co-starring in the John Candy comedy Summer Rental. And although this is the end of her Star Trek credits so far, Karen was one of the many actors up for the role of Captain Janeway in this very series.
What's that? You thought that Voyager was a series that would never swill blood wine and eat fine Klingon cuisine? Think again.
Prologue. B'Elanna is on her way back to Voyager after a mission to retrieve a stray probe, but the shuttle takes a beating in an ion storm. She crash lands in the shuttle bay, and Tom swoops in to diagnose her with a concussion. Once B'Elanna is okay, Janeway gives her the talk about disobeying orders. Just as they wrap things up, Janeway calls her Lana, a name only B'Elanna's mother ever used. Later, Chakotay stops by her quarters with a surprise, a Klingon artifact they found stuck in her shuttle's nacelle. He leaves it behind as a souvenir, but the artifact begins to bleed and emanate Klingon voices. Act 1. In engineering, B'Elanna and Harry study the artifact, trying to figure out how a chunk of metal could, bleed. Harry thinks she imagined it, but B'Elanna pushes for a more detailed scan. Then Neelix arrives, excitedly announcing a party to celebrate the artifact from the Alpha Quadrant and, by extension, all things Klingon. Before the party, B'Elanna visits Tuvok for a Vulcan perspective. He points out that maybe the artifact has stirred up her conflicted feelings about her Klingon side, but that's not all. He rather pointedly demonstrates his skill with a bat'leth, then taunts her to get in touch with her Klingon side, even taking a swipe at her cheek with the blade. Shocked and frustrated, she leaves, while Tuvok cruelly dismisses her to contemplate her own dishonor. Later, at Neelix's Klingon party, the Doctor enthusiastically sings Klingon songs to a very unamused 7 of 9. Neelix offers Tom some replicated gach, and B'Elanna is disgusted by everyone's Klingon fever. As Janeway toasts the Empire, the whole scene takes a turn, slowing down while B'Elanna hallucinates Klingon warriors attacking the crew. She collapses and awakens on a ghostly barge where a Klingon warns her, "The dead ask no questions." Act 2. B'Elanna realizes she's on the Barge of the Dead, the mythical Klingon ship carrying dishonored souls to Gre'thor, Klingon hell. One of the Klingons tries to brand her with the Empire's insignia, but it doesn't take, indicating that she's not dead yet. Voices are trying to lure her overboard, but when a fellow Klingon jumps ship, vicious creatures called Koskari drag him under. B'Elanna is brought before the captain, Kortar, who tells her it isn't her time yet. Then, to her horror, another soul is delivered to the barge, her mother, Miral. Then B'Elanna snaps back to consciousness in sickbay. Act 3. Tom and the Doctor clue B'Elanna in that she nearly died in the shuttle and was in a coma. So you see, B'Elanna, that whole Barge of the Dead experience was all in your mind. Chakotay visits her quarters a little later, where she insists it was real, that her own dishonor for turning her back on her Klingon side has condemned her mother to Gre'thor. Chakotay thinks her subconscious drew on the symbols of Klingon mythology to cope with the trauma, but B'Elanna refuses to accept a psychological explanation. In engineering, Tom finds her reading ancient Klingon texts that confirm her mother is paying for her dishonor. He brushes it off, but B'Elanna is convinced the only way to free her mother's soul is to return to the barge. She requests Janeway's permission to be put into a controlled coma, hoping to get back to the Barge of the Dead. Janeway argues against it, concerned about the risk, but she finally agrees. In sickbay, Tom expresses his concern but pledges his support. The Doctor goes to work, and the procedure begins. B'Elanna reappears on the barge, this time clad in full Klingon armor. Act 4. B'Elanna finds her mother, Miral, who initially doubts she's real. B'Elanna tries to explain that she's there to redeem her, claiming she's finally embracing Klingon spirituality. Miral, however, insists that it's B'Elanna's own dishonor that got them here, and doubts she's changed at all. They argue, rehashing old conflicts, until B'Elanna apologizes. But Miral isn't in a forgiving mood. Just then, guards grab B'Elanna and drag her back to Kortar. She strikes a bargain with him. She'll take her mother's place in Gre'thor, allowing Miral to ascend to Sto-vo-kor. Kortar says he knows about her plans to be revived by her friends watching out for her, but B'Elanna reconsiders and insists that she's willing to sacrifice herself. Miral objects, but the transference is performed, and the scar on Miral's cheek relocates to B'Elanna's. The dishonor is lifted, and Miral is freed. As the barge approaches the gates of Gre'thor, B'Elanna prepares to step down the gangway and into her fate. Cutting back to sickbay, Tom and the Doctor struggle as B'Elanna's neural patterns deteriorate. The Doctor tries venting the ionized particles from her body, but she doesn't respond. Desperate, he injects her with cordrazine, hoping to revive her. B'Elanna, in her mind, still on the barge, sees Tuvok wielding a bat'leth. He strikes her, and then she wakes up in a way more goth-looking sickbay with a mark on her cheek and still in Klingon uniform. The Doctor states, "Welcome to Gre'thor." Act 5. Yeah, she's not really back on Voyager, and this version of Neelix and the Doctor start hinting that maybe she's actually in Gre'thor. Neelix describes the layout of Voyager in great detail and teases her about never really fitting in. He leads her to the mess hall, where Seven and the Doctor sing more Klingon drinking songs, and Janeway gives a toast to B'Elanna's dishonor. In the real sickbay, B'Elanna's condition worsens, and the Doctor attempts direct neural stimulation. In Gre'thor, B'Elanna is confronted by her mother again, urging her to figure this out on her own. She sees her crew, who remind her of her anger and isolation. Janeway tells her that she is isolated from the others, and Harry remarks on how she keeps everyone at arm's length. When Tuvok appears, again with a bat'leth, B'Elanna keeps fighting back, begging to know what each of her crewmates want of her. What do they want her to be? Neelix says they are not her enemies. B'Elanna says she's so tired of fighting, to which Janeway says, "We know." B'Elanna tosses the bat'leth away, exhausted, and Miral comforts her with the knowledge that now she's taken the first step, and perhaps they'll see each other again someday, at home. B'Elanna awakens in sickbay, welcomed back by Janeway with a strong, familial hug. The end. So I love the action of this teaser segment, and I thought, like, I kind of feel like Janeway does. Like, she's risking her life to go chase after a probe. Like, I have to assume that is a real thing in the real world here, not just in the dream state afterlife world that we're in.
Ooh,
no,
I don't know. That might be too much of a risk. I mean, this episode makes you think, when was the last time you had reality?
That, you know what? I like it when episodes do this and they kind of make you rethink, oh, wait a minute, from scene to scene to scene, what is real and what's not. And this one, we really don't get into the quote-unquote real world until Act 2. So, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, this still could be. I think it is reality, but it made me question it, so I'm going to make all of you question
Very good, very good. Well, but I like the little tells that we get. So, obviously, Janeway calling her Lana. Great. That's just a great little piece if you have no idea what you're getting into here. And I really wondered, like, we always play fast and loose with Chakotay's ancestors and what they know or don't know or what wisdom they've imparted. Did any of them really use the term monkey wrench?
Seriously, really, that took me out of it. Yeah, they could have come up with something different.
But you have to assume then that's B'Elanna's, now in retrospect, that's B'Elanna's mind putting that word or that phrase into the Chakotay character that she sees. So she has to know that. Oh, wait a minute. Did she get that word from Tom?
Oh, that makes sense.
All right. Maybe. Yeah. Interesting. All right.
Yep. Okay.
See, we're putting it together here.
It is her brain.
Okay. And I thought it was an interesting conceit to have this chunk of metal with the Empire logo on it, and then it bleeds in classic horror movie style. Why not?
That was a little weird because I didn't understand the blood. The graphics might not have held up quite so well.
Well, that is one of those things, of course, when we assess, does the episode hold up? Like, do some of the effects take you out of it? Do they not? I think we might both have thoughts on that.
But I liked the voices. I felt that was but the blood took me out of it.
For real.
So why was everyone so surprised to find this piece from the Alpha Quadrant? I mean, B'Elanna, she had a reason and it made sense. And it was like, well, duh, the Borg brought it here and like took it, put it out their chute. Like, I'm really surprised that no one else came up with that thought.
Come to think of it, all right, we know that the caretaker does its thing. We just met another ship that was from the Alpha Quadrant. We have met Ferengi in the Delta Quadrant. We know what the Borg can do. We know all of this. And we're in the 24th century, by the way. Who's to say that a Klingon expedition would not have gone out 100 years before? Or whatever. So, it's not that unlikely that you would find something. Bleeding and screaming at you, totally different question. It's a very different thing. I always like Neelix's awkwardness trying to put something together like this. And the idea that he has replicated 5 barrels of blood wine. First of all, a lot of energy use. Second of all, how many people on Voyager are going to drink the stuff? That just seems like a big, big waste. I'm also again, I think as you and I talk about this, we have to realize that when we're in the fantasy world, a lot of my initial reactions were just like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on here, until going back to watch it over and over again until we reveal what's happening. So, like, I love this scene of Tuvok not holding back with the harsh truths about B'Elanna's self-loathing. Oh, wow.
That was awesome. And how awesome is Tuvok wielding the Batleth?
Yeah.
Like, is that now, I'm not as well versed with Voyager. Is Tuvok normally holding a Batleth, or is this something
here's
new
the thing
here?
about Tuvok that I love is that, first of all, we don't get nearly enough Tuvok, but when we get him, it's always like a little bit more depth. And there are episodes of Voyager where you really get into his psyche and you go, there's some really messed up, violent stuff going on in there. So I would imagine that between the simmering rage that is somewhere deep in his psyche and also just his ability to study and be adept at anything that he does, Batleth skills, absolutely. So that works from a real world perspective, but also from B'Elanna's fantasy world. Like, here's what's so cool is now that we know that this is all B'Elanna's projection of what she thinks about these people and what she thinks they think about her. That's, I love the way this plays on every level. And I love that B'Elanna even has her own retort. Like, talking about the Batleth, saying it's overstated, like everything else Klingon.
Oh. Yeah.
Love that bit. Love that.
Yeah, her disdain for Klingon is so evident and probably pushed a little bit more in this episode. But I mean, it keeps hitting her in the face.
Literally and
so,
figuratively.
Yeah, it's something she has to...
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Now, if we didn't have enough clues yet between the teaser and where we are, that this is all kind of a weird construct. It's not really the real world. As soon as we go into the party at the mess hall and we have that handheld camera behind B'Elanna following her and then kind of dipping around, like changing angles, we're just going to swoop in and see what the Doctor and Seven are doing. They were going to move over. That's a really good tell to the audience that something is up, that something is just off with that visual cue. Love that just as much as I love Seven of the Doctors singing together. Always nice to have.
Let me just back up a little bit because, like, why is everyone up at 3 a.m.? And why, B'Elanna, do you think that everyone works around the clock? Like, I get why, because Kim was trying to help her figure out the piece. But there was Neelix planning a party at 3 a.m. Oh, let me go visit Tuvok, because he's obviously up at 3 a.m. Let me just drop in. Like, come on,
I think B'Elanna probably rage works at 3 a.m. anyway. And then, so maybe she's just dragging these people into her weird, twisted fantasy. Like, no, it's not just about the weird dream stuff. It's like, I'm going to make you work, you know?
And Neelix is the perfect morale officer. He found the true reason as to why you would have a celebration, because B'Elanna doesn't get it. She's like, I'm the only Klingon. No one needs to celebrate. It means nothing to them. But in actuality, it does. Like, this is a piece that is going to connect them to the Alpha Quadrant. This is a piece that represents it still is there. Like, I love that for Neelix to find it and to celebrate it, because I'm sure it would help. Of course,
he's
everyone.
The one who's going to turn it into a party. I love that. Yeah. Yes. Now, when we get onto the barge, I love the whole, like, Klingon Gothicness of all of this. And we've heard all these pieces in Star Trek past about Klingon mythology, and we get hints of the style and what it all means. But seeing it come to life like this is just really cool to me. Like, there's the moodiness and, of course, the symbology, which there is a lot of that described throughout this episode. I love the ancient analog feel of the ship. You know, it's wood and chains and metal and all this stuff. I love that very Klingon-looking ship's wheel. It's huge, you know. And of course, I love the parallels to Earth mythology as well, like the ferryman bringing you across the river Styx. Just all of that I thought was very well thought out to make it alien enough, but also make it very familiar to, you know, a human audience watching this.
Yeah, and I love the idea of a ship going around and just like plucking the dead from the Naj. I mean, it's even cool they have a name, the Naj. So they're getting plucked from their fantasy or this illusion of life, and they're gathering the dead to go to Gre'thor. Like, the whole mythology is just all wrapped up in the lighting and everything. It really makes you feel like you're there, you know? And I love the introduction of the mark, because we'll get there a little bit later. And the mark, it doesn't take it on her cheek, you know? And it's not and so it's like this mark is this whole mythology of the mark knows your real intent. Are you really wanting to die? Because at this point, no, you're not. And so I'm not going to leave my mark on you. So it's this idea of this knowing, or that you're being watched, sort of along with that mythology.
Like that a lot. Yeah, indeed.
Okay. So, John, let me ask you this question. There's in the quote, if you didn't believe, you wouldn't be here. So does this mean that our perception creates our reality?
I think you just nailed something that is central to the way this show works, or the kind of the theme of this episode. Yeah, she absolutely sees the thing that is what is rattling around in her subconscious. It is a belief layer in her. Whether she thinks that is literal or not, that is what shapes what she sees. Oh man, I don't want to jump ahead, but like this is a whole thing about even if you look at like the science of near-death experience, you know, people experience those in different ways, and it is a scientific phenomenon as well that can be kind of induced, but it is informed by whatever the tradition of belief is that you have. So yeah. She believes it, therefore she is there. She absolutely created it. Yeah. Excellent note. Now, I love that it takes until Act 3. We are rolling into Act 3, the middle of the show, and now here's the reveal that everything that we've seen up until now did not occur.
Yeah, no. You should see my notes with all the exclamation.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Well,
what is
see, and
real?
it's funny because I don't know how you took your notes for this show, but I always start writing this segment as I'm watching the episode for the first time. And especially if it's an episode that I don't remember all the details, I don't remember the twists, then I have to go back and go like, oh, wait a minute, they explained that. Oh, wait a minute, here's why this character was acting so strangely. I just think it's very bold and very cool for a show that is kind of running like clockwork here. And a lot of Star Trek, you can measure the beats pretty easily to say, no, wait, all this stuff that already happened, nope, not there. It's all in her head, which is kind of why I go back to the teaser, why I asked you about was she actually chasing a multispatial probe, because that seems like a whole lot of nothing to risk your life over.
Right. And again, it's like, when was that last time we saw her? Is this entire episode a reality? And like you, with the second time watching it, now that I knew, it's like you could see those breadcrumbs, you know. We talked about Janeway calling her Lana. Oh, that's what my mother. Oh, I have been thinking about my mother. And, you know, this Tuvok bringing up this Klingonness that she's not accepting. It's a great how they did that.
So good. Now the more we get into this, and now we introduce the real Chakotay to try to talk to B'Elanna about what's going on. He's got a great line. There are things in the universe that can't be scanned with a tricorder. But I thought it was such an interesting choice. Of course, you have to have a spiritual conversation with Chakotay. He is the guy who, you've seen the meme, right? My people intensifies, where it's Chakotay being faced with anything that, he's going to reference my people, right? But it's interesting that he is the one who is the most obtuse about the spirituality here. So he's the one who tells B'Elanna straight up, like, yeah, it's probably just your subconscious mind trying to tell you something. And I think I want to follow up that thread in the next segment when we dig a little bit deeper. But it made sense to me that these two need to get together and have a conversation. But it really revealed something about Chakotay's own perspective and his maybe distance from his own spiritual tradition. So that was an interesting place to land here in the 6th season.
So knowing that this is B'Elanna's imagination of what she believes Chakotay
Well, I think in this part, we are actually in the real Chakotay because, she wakes up.
Okay.
She's, hey, wait, I've been on Voyager. I didn't actually die. So now I need to get some real spiritual counseling. And here's Chakotay with not real.
Yeah. Okay. The blocking, I guess the director would do, I really found effective. And sort of to your point with Chakotay and B'Elanna, his scene, when the camera was on him, it was all grays, dark grays, black and white, and he was in the shadow. And then when it was on B'Elanna, she had this beautiful red curtain, of course, Klingonness. She was lit up. She had a lot of skin. She was just in a tank top. So it's like she was even brighter. And so there was something there that maybe his comments weren't the real thing that she needed to hear, because to me, and for me to recognize something like that, it really stood out. And she was just overall, she was gorgeous in this episode. She was very well lit. But I like that difference between those two, where it's like he was talking spirituality, but I don't think she was ready to listen to it.
And did you notice, by the way, the other choice that I liked in that scene, no music and no sound effects. It just made everything really intimate, really personal, and gets rid of some of the things that are the artifice of a TV show, watching a dramatic scene. Now all you have is the way these people look and sound and the words coming out of their mouths. And I thought that was really cool. I like the little virtual prop that we have when B'Elanna's reviewing the ancient scrolls, and it just... it looks like, if you were to go to the internet now and look up the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's kind of how it looks. You just bring up a picture and, there it is. That was pretty cool. Then we get to this really interesting scene with Janeway. And again, also, I think some questions that I'll have for you in the next segment. Janeway saying, I respect what you believe. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Tom says, I respect what you believe in, but you're starting to scare me. Yeah, then we cut to Janeway, and Janeway's trying to push back against this idea. And then she just kind of folds. then she's just like, yeah, boy, you played on my emotions. Okay, B'Elanna played Janeway, and now B'Elanna gets to do what she wants. No?
I don't think she got played. I mean, the issue is Janeway tried to slough it off like, I'm not going to get into this debate. You're too valuable of a person. And then she's like, but the debate is my religion. I'm having a religious crisis and I want to do something for my religion at this one time. Doesn't matter. Shouldn't she have the right to? And she says the point, what I do on my own time. So it really does, if you boil it down, it is a religious issue.
It is. And we will get further into this, but I guess the question is, if you have a device that is putting you into a comatose state out of which you may never be revived, just given a misdiagnosis, given a slip of the finger on the computer system, like, this is dangerous. So, and Voyager might be out one chief engineer. I guess we better train somebody else for the job, Yeah. So B'Elanna's back in the dream state / afterlife state, and she says to Miral, her mother, "I've changed." And Miral just says, "Not enough." And I like how this is like a parent-child relationship. Like, the parent has such high standards that no matter what, the child literally risks death. And not good enough.
No.
And then I do like this bit of chicanery that is uncovered. So Miral says, I should have known that you would choose the easy way. And I like that it's, B'Elanna is trying to be a believer at this point. It's not like she actually believes it. She's trying to go through the motions to make it look like she believes what she's doing earnestly, but it's not there. It hasn't clicked yet. And then I like how that has to unravel here. No tricks, no games. I thought that was a good way to kind of snap her out of, like, I'm just going to outsmart the system.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she tries to outsmart the system many times through this. Yeah, she's trying to outsmart it every which way.
We got a lot of different Klingons here, and I like how, I assume it's Michael Westmore, doing different takes on the Klingon head ridge design. Like, everybody's a little different. B'Elanna being half human, hers look a little bit different. And on Gre'thor, they almost had these indentations. It's almost like a Cardassian thing. It's just very impressive and very imposing. I little terrified.
I agree, because not every Klingon looks the same. Like, you can't say that, because the ridges, everything. Yes, Michael Westmore did a great job.
Good stuff. And I mentioned before that I love the set piece of the barge. I love all the wood and iron and all this stuff. The entrance to Gre'thor, maybe that's one of those effects that doesn't hold up quite as well. Like, it is ambitious, but give that a pass 25 years later with CG, and it might hold up a little bit better.
Yeah, it was great that they showed the rocking of the ship, and the plank to walk out. That was a little interesting, as we know, getting off a cruise.
Yeah, right.
I liked the effort. Yeah. Let's put it that way. Of the rocking of the ship.
I also like this very funny thing that's the idea that in her case, Klingon hell is going to be Voyager. It's just more of Voyager. Like, no. This who was it? Was it Oscar Wilde who said hell is other people? And I it might be attributed to somebody else, but I love this idea that, like, oh no, this now is your afterlife and eternity with all of these people, some of whom you just resent. Because we haven't gotten to this point where she has truly, like, found herself and let go of these things that keep her stagnant.
Can I ask a question here related to that? Have we seen other members of the crew get over the hurdle that she is fighting right now?
Okay. I want you to save that question. Because we are going to draw a parallel in the next segment for sure. Oh, but I will say this, that, Star Trek overall, and I think Voyager in particular, has this real problem with starting out the idea of a character and saying, hey, we're going to give this character an arc. They're going to have some problem that they overcome, something like that. And then they sort of forget that they did that. Or they forget that it does have some meaningful, impactful effect on who they are. So this is one of the rare places. I mean, even Janeway had a big spiritual experience back in season 2, I want to say, which may or may not have had lingering effects, but even on a smaller scale, somebody like Tom Paris, okay, he's a bad boy, he's a rebel, he was in jail, he's got a chip on his shoulder, but now he has this kind of newfound family on board, except for all the times that we forget that and we write him like some, irrepressible teenager again. So, it's, they don't always know what to do here, It's interesting also to me that in B'Elanna's version of the afterlife here, that she's stuck on Voyager for eternity, and that all the other characters are still kind of themselves. Like she just sort of, they're not mean to her. They're not awful. They're just like, yeah, this is what you get. This is more of Voyager, and it could go nearly warp 10, but we're not going to. And Neelix is still going to throw parties, and like Eternity Anywhere would be awful. Just saying you would spend an eternity anywhere at all would be terrible. But I'd still take Voyager over Gre'thor if Gre'thor means a lot of flames and, a lot of. But I really appreciate this like theatrical, metaphoric way to get into B'Elanna's head. That last scene where everybody's around her and you get the return of the Batleth and she's got to throw it and all. It just plays like this Greek tragedy, like this very staged thing with all of her crewmates challenging her, but also supporting her at the same time. Like, really, just over the top, but it's Klingon, so it can be over the top.
Exactly. I mean, it's a Klingon opera. And she's in the center and everyone's around. I mean, and we've seen this when Worf got discommoded, right? He's in the center and everyone's around and they turn their backs on him. And here she is now with her crew. She's the Klingon and the non-Klingons are this circle and she's rashing around and it is such this tragedy. It's glorious. It's what Klingons write operas about. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And kind of nice that we get a hug at the end. We get this really lovely moment, not with you, Tom, with B'Elanna and Janeway. And it's just, there are so many times on Mission Log that I say the best kind of scene is the one where you show and don't tell. And that was a scene where they decided to show and not tell, and it worked perfectly.
It did. And it was so B'Elanna. Here she has this thrashing moment, right, in her vision, and so much anger and breakdown and vulnerability. And now in our real prime time, it's this understated hug of authenticity, breaking down, but just still, here's your hug. I mean, it was perfectly B'Elanna.
Time to conduct an informal poll. Is Neelix's attempt at Klingon food a new low for the mess hall menu?
Amy, just a second ago, before we even hit record, you said there is so much meat here on this episode. There is a lot that we can discuss. And I think before we get into some of your notes and some of my other notes, there was something that you mentioned a moment ago in the last segment about other characters on Voyager going through this kind of experience. And it's funny because the short answer is, well, yes and no. Like, characters have changes, characters have arcs, but then I'm not always convinced that they stick. And even when it's something bold and dramatic. I mean, Harry Kim has died twice, and but one of the ones that I think is so important and so profound, one of my all-time favorite Voyager episodes is called Mortal Coil. And this seems to be the other side of that particular coin. Because in Mortal Coil, Neelix dies, and then he's revived by Seven of Nine like I think 18 hours later, something like that. So he is dead. By all accounts, he is dead. And she just happens to have the nanoprobes that will bring him back to life, repair the cellular damage, right? But here's the thing. When he dies and he comes back, when he's revived, he realizes that there is no afterlife. And he has this whole Talaxian mythology that has informed his life. His family is gone. There's a lot of tragedy in Neelix's background. And he thinks that he's going to see his family again when he's gone. And he realizes that he didn't and he won't. And it puts him into this spiral of depression, right? Now, it is a heavy episode. And we happened to record that at a time that I had a major loss in my life, and it really informed what I had to say about that episode. But here's the thing. I still watch that, and I think there is a light at the end of that particular tunnel, because the next step is, okay, Neelix, you're still alive. And Neelix, you get to now make meaning in your life. The meaning isn't about what's waiting for you on the other side. The meaning is about the relationships that you have with the people around you. And it's about the bonds that you form and the love that you have among these other people. So this story is in many ways the opposite of that. And I think is a fascinating parallel to put up against Mortal Coil. Now, the similarity is that she finds meaning and worth and value among not just the people that she's around, but in herself. That is the important part. Can't have those relationships unless you find that in yourself. But I love that, she doesn't realize that she's dead exactly, comes face to face with her own version of the afterlife. And that version is tied up with this internal conflict about her view of herself and about Klingon identity and guilt about her mother and all this really heavy stuff. And the only other thing I'll say about that, because I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this. The only other thing that I'll drop in here is that I think what's interesting about this story, basing itself on Klingon mythology, and Neelix's story with Talaxian mythology and his beliefs about the afterlife, is that it really drives home how powerful myth and religious stories and belief systems are. Because even if you don't, quote unquote, believe anymore, the way that B'Elanna is just I'm not connected to it. It's not, oh boy, does she, because she's still holding on to it. And it still informs something about her, and by extension, us who are on B'Elanna's journey here. I think back to The Cage, in the very first episode of Star Trek, and the very first episode of Mission Log that we ever did. The Talosians torture Pike with images of a myth from childhood, which is hell. You see, the sort of commonly, Western Christian idea of what hell is. But they go this is just a story, but by the way, this still has power over you, and we're going to use that to mess with you. I just said a lot.
Oh my gosh, where to begin?
See, that's the problem.
Oh boy, I'm just going to leave that last comment because I will get a little too heated. So let's talk about what you were saying with the afterlife and sort of how the two episodes, Mortal Coil and this one, Barge of the Dead, look at that, because I think it's very interesting, especially in this episode where there is an afterlife. It's B'Elanna is believing, and her perception is her reality. So there is this afterlife where Neelix thought there was and not. But either way, I think the message, at least of the barge part, is whether there's an afterlife or not, them plucking the dead from their fantasy illusion of live in the now. And I think that message can be applied to both. If there is an afterlife, live in it. If there's not, then you won't be living. So live right now and accept the reality. Don't try and create an illusion, because that in and of itself is creating a distance. And that's what B'Elanna has done since Voyager. This whole time, she's kept him at a distance. And she's not accepting their love. She's not giving her love.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you can live in the moment, I feel like that was a huge thing in this episode.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that angle about the denial of where she is. And that she, the first thing that we see as soon as she's on the barge is she will not accept that this is real at all, and won't accept that she's there. Now, okay, granted, the meta view of this, like we have to step back and go, well, while this is happening in her head, her body is on a bed in sickbay, and she's not dead. She's got hypoxia, she's, whatever else is going on here that is making her physically experience this. But that is her brain working through not just, well, here's the story, here's the way we tell the story, but here are the real world, real life things that I have to work through, which is my relationship with my mother, my relationship with my crewmates, my, the guilt about leaving, like all these other things. And at every point, deny the reality of that, deny the reality of what I think of myself, deny the reality of my relationship with my mother, deny the reality of my relationship with my other crewmates, and then ultimately deny where I even am. Yeah.
One thing that you brought up was her guilt. And I felt like that also had a huge part to play when she's looking through the scroll and she realizes, oh, Mother is on the barge going to Gre'thor because of me, because I did not accept this Klingonness. And automatically she takes on this guilt. And I felt so bad because that, again, is her own guilt. We're seeing this. And I don't believe that her mother actually would do and say these things. I mean, I would hope that a mother wouldn't say those things. But she obviously is feeling it. And it's kept this burden where she doesn't feel worthy. And therefore, she's not making the connections with her crew. So it's all coming down to this end result where she's thrashing around with this bat'leth, going in circles because she doesn't want anyone to love her, because she doesn't love herself. And it goes back to this guilt, this sins of the child that she was told about. And for her to release it, and this, again, the last image with her in the center and the bat'leth flashing around, she finally gives in. She breaks in. And this moment that we have, and it's just acceptance.
Yeah.
And it seems so easy to say, but it's not.
Yeah.
But yet it is. Because once she just accepts and says, all right, I'm okay. I will accept you and love you. I will be vulnerable and you will still love me. That's so important for this. And I think it's, she deserves to be loved, and we all do. And we need to accept it. And it's harder than it is, but it's that easy.
I love what you're saying, and I'm going to try very hard right now to not get on my soapbox, high-minded, preachy mission log voice here. Because, yes, mission log is a conversation. It is also a show that happens to have the opinions of your humble hosts, whoever they may be at any given point. But what you're saying, man, that has really triggered something in me to think there's an element of this that is a condemnation of not the mother imparting this guilt, okay? Because like you said, you hope that she's actually not really like that. This is all a manifestation of what is in B'Elanna's mind. And sure, there might be problems there, but B'Elanna hasn't seen her mother in a very long time, yes. Okay? I think what's more at the root of this, that there is this condemnation of a system, a Klingon social system, a Klingon belief system that is so tied up in these arcane ideas about honor and dishonor and micromanaging every little move to analyze how it reflects on your own personal honor or your family honor. And no, it's not just you. It's not just your sins. It's the sins of the father, if we may refer to that one as well, right? So you're condemning a whole family because of...
And future generations, mind
yes.
you.
Yeah. And I think it's not very hard to think to real-world parallels, Earthbound, 20th, 21st century, and prior to those, traditions that do that use guilt and use these ideas of generations long or eternal long condemnation because you did something wrong or you're tainted by something that happened in your family. And at the end of the day, the beauty of, that is all wretched, but the beauty of a story like this is the individual finding the strength to say, no, I don't need that anymore. I'm not affected by that anymore. What's actually important here is that I find myself and I find the strength in the relationships of the people who are actually here for me and appreciate me. And it's not about adherence to some sort of proscribed tradition. Oh, yeah. I like where your mind is right now, Amy. That was good stuff.
You know, one thing, the Tooth Fairy came up in this episode, right?
The Tooth Fairy did, yes.
It did, yes. And B'Elanna was so desperately wanting to do what is right. Just tell me what to do. She didn't want to take any ownership. All she wanted to do was follow directions. I mean, that, in my opinion, is what religion is. Just do what I tell you to do. Don't even think for yourself. And I will ingrain this mythology into you, and then you will follow me, and I will, enough of that. But she is lacking a purpose. She is not thinking for herself. Tell me, even the Tooth Fairy. And I feel like she has an opportunity at this point to find her purpose, not her mother's purpose. She shouldn't be living for what her mother wants her to do. She shouldn't be living what Janeway wants her to do, right? She needs to find her purpose, not what religion tells her, your inner purpose. And that's where you're going to find happiness. That's where you're going to find authenticity. That's where you're going to allow others in. That's what's going to allow you to be vulnerable, but still strong.
Yeah, agreed.
Is to have that inner purpose. And I think that through this episode, she finds that purpose.
Yeah, and looking back on it, I kind of resent the traditions of Klingon belief that have harmed her in that pursuit. Because she's walking around carrying all this stuff in her subconscious that is full of judgment and damnation, rather than just being able to figure out who she is and what the relationships are in her own terms. Oh, man. You know what? There was so much room to go down a whole other rabbit hole about the ethics of religious freedom on board, because certainly that's an interesting conversation that she and Janeway have. I think we got to shelve that for another time. We'll probably get back to it on our Discord, or certainly from the many emails that people will write us about this episode. One other thing I just want to hit on a little bit I'm going to go back to Chakotay a little here because I think now, because I brought that up in the last segment, and I think now that actually I look at his relationship to his faith tradition, to his spiritual tradition, as a little healthier version of what B'Elanna is going through. Now, Chakotay seems a bit more detached, but we also know that he has a lot of respect and he has a lot of influence from these beliefs tied back to his ancestors, et cetera. Like that, this is something that informs who he is, right? But I'm interested in this conversation that he has with B'Elanna, saying that what she experienced was symbols, and he's right, and her subconscious mind is working out this stuff. And he also says that they need to take the time to work out the symbols. Now, like I said, he has this sort of detachment from the mythologic look at spiritual experience, and I guess that's not entirely out of step with, what we have seen of him before, bringing meaning to his life. But I love this metaphor, this kind of description that he said. He said his grandfather believed that he could transform himself into a wolf, but that doesn't mean that he grew hair and walked around on all fours. So I like that he has the good sense to say, like, yeah, we have these layers upon layers upon layers of myth and belief, and some of them might sound pretty strange, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that he actually did that. It means that there was some meaning that he took from that idea. And he's trying to steer B'Elanna into this idea to be able to look at her own tradition that way. Yes. But here's B'Elanna saying, like, no, I need to literally almost die again and go experience that, like taking herself to that extreme. And it really makes me wonder, where do we catch her on the flip side of this?
Yeah. How far is too far? Can you could you have done that mental experiment without being in sickbay? That's the challenge. Right. Could you have gone through that mentally without putting your body in danger?
Yeah.
And that takes courage to look at it.
It does, yeah.
Is it a good sign when someone regains consciousness in sickbay and says they're alive, as if they're surprised? Or is that normal?
All right, we have survived the journey on the Barge of the Dead. And we've arrived at the end, very much like B'Elanna, asking ourselves some pretty deep questions. And to sum it all up, we'll ask ourselves the deepest of questions. Does the episode hold up? And what did we learn? And oh my, there is so much to pull from this. Again, we can only do so much in one podcast episode. But Amy, I'm going to throw it to you first to ask if the episode holds up. And that, again, just very vaguely worded, because there might be things that hold up for you, other things that don't. There might be some things that take you completely out of it, and maybe you'll never watch it again. I don't know, but I will ask you, given your own very subjective experience with this episode, does Barge of the Dead hold up?
It absolutely holds up because of the morals, messages, and meanings.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
we'll put a pin in that.
Yeah, there was a couple that, pulled me out, but I watched Star Trek for how does it relate in my life? How can I use this in my life? And as we just discussed, there is a lot to use to make a better, happier Amy. And so therefore, it definitely holds up.
All right. Yeah. Hard agree. It holds up. However, I remember not liking this episode the first time I saw it years ago. And I think it's because I hadn't been watching the series in earnest from beginning to end. And I was not tuned into the B'Elanna story. I was just not tuned into her journey, right? So I got to this and I just thought like, Klingon episode. And, But the beauty of this is I get to revisit this. I get to look at this through a fresh perspective, really think about what is being explored here. in terms of her personal psychology and in the religious mythology that is being explored here too, and how that affects who she is. And I think they have bitten off a lot to chew on here. I don't think they're necessarily leaving us with one specific answer, like this is right, this is wrong, whatever. Right. They're just saying, like, here, we're just going to give you this complicated psychological experience to chew on. And that's what we get to do. I'm usually not that into Klingon-centric stories, to be quite honest. And not that I have anything about Klingons in particular being in Star Trek. It's just that I don't like to spend all my time there, or a lot of my time there. And I feel like, oh, maybe we've just gotten all out of the Klingons that we can get. However, I watch this and I go, okay, this is clever, this is intriguing, it is character-driven, and it is very smart. Not just in the way that it's written and produced. Like, I love that it messes with our sense of the reality of the show, but I love going back and, like, checking out the little hints along the way. And I love the depth of the myth. I think that is adequately explored here. And the most important thing at the end of the day is that, you know, we have this interesting way, this science fiction metaphoric way to talk about ideas of faith and the afterlife and science and identity and personal value, the personal journey that may either run in parallel or conflict with those things. This has got it all. Like, it really does. And it does it in a very entertaining package. And I think also, just in terms of Voyager's journey, this episode delivers on something that had been teased about B'Elanna for a long time in reconciling who she is. Way back early in the run, there is an episode called Faces that is a blatant attempt to do that, to figure her out. But ever since then, I feel like we just kind of go back and forth and like, oh, B'Elanna's got an attitude again, and she's full of anger and self-loathing again, and none of that really reconciles in any way. It just sort of comes up when I feel like the writers don't really know what to do. But now we get this piece that is about, you know, very profoundly about self-forgiveness and B'Elanna reaching this breaking point to figure out who she is. So, yeah, success all around. I mean, it succeeds because not just the in-universe Star Trek lore, but also because we get a personal story, and I just really hope that this informs B'Elanna's character going forward. Please, 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 writers, 25 years ago, retroactively, when you hear this, don't just slip back into writing her as, you know, a surly problem child because we can't figure out what to do with her. This should be a major, major turning point for her. So,
agreed.
Only time will tell.
Yes.
Only time will tell. Look, morals, meanings, messages. I mean, I feel like even going into the previous segment, there's so much and there are so many ways to pick this episode apart. I'm going to throw out a couple. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. The first thing that I thought really struck with me was B'Elanna making this case for wanting to go through this process again. She says, it doesn't matter if you think it's real, it was real to me. And here we get at the heart of, you know, the nature of religious experience. Because there isn't like an objective way that you can look at an experience and say, well, it's not real. It is real for you, but what we don't have is sort of the underlying cause of the experience to really be objective about. And that leaves me with this outstanding question. You know, does B'Elanna going forward think that her experience was real in the literal sense that she actually experienced an afterlife, a mythologic spiritual afterlife, or was it real enough in the sense that it was a very useful metaphor for dealing with her personal issues? And I think, to me, my personal bias is that is actually the best outcome, is that if she sees the value, as Chakotay did, in the metaphoric value of what happens here. The other thing here that I think I wrote down a couple of lines is in this last scene, this last dramatic scene. where she is confronted with her image of her fellow crewmates. They say to her, "You've let your anger consume you. Now it's consuming us." And B'Elanna can only say, "Tell me what you want me to be." And here again, heart of the story. B'Elanna is and has been lost for a very long time, and she still doesn't know who she is, and she's fundamentally uncomfortable in the decisions that she's made about her role in her culture and about her relationships with her crew. And now we get to a point where she has to purge all of that. And the Klingon religious symbology in the background, yes, that's all great. But honestly, again, it's science fiction. It applies to all of us. You could substitute any belief system you want for that. And at the end of the day, the message is that it can't do the work for you. You have to do it yourself. Amy, what have you got for us?
Ooh, that was good, John. Oh my gosh.
I loved this episode, and I can't wait to continue the conversation about it.
Yes, this episode goes through what I feel is my story, is B'Elanna's story, is what you were saying, is accepting yourself and taking this ownership. And I was raised in a very religious heavy environment, being raised in Utah. I'm sure you can guess, being raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And this mythology and being raised and taught, and just like B'Elanna was, and then trying to figure out for myself what is fact, what is fantasy, because I don't like living in a illusion. To me, it's not real. It's not authentic. And going through this journey is very similar to this episode, and deciding what is real and making the hard choices of, okay, I have to trust in others that they are going to love me in my true self, whether I'm Mormon or not. You're either going to love me for who I am or not. And if you don't, then it hurts me, but I have to tell myself I'm going to still be okay. I'm just going to find someone else to love me or not, right? Living in the now, getting plucked and living in the barge, because that's where we are right now. And breaking away. Remember Riker in Frame of Mind? Is that the one?
Oh, yeah.
Breaking it down, getting rid of, this is fake, this is mythology, I don't believe it. I'm going to live right now, because we only have right now. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. We live right now. And this, for her thrashing around, I know I keep going back to that scene, but her thrashing around, as difficult as that is necessary in breaking down. And hopefully next time if we see this, I don't know if she's going to go through this again, or the next time I live in an illusion and start thrashing around, if I can just get there faster of being vulnerable, letting others in, being authentic, living right now, then I don't have to go through and making this difficult and having this entire episode describe one choice. If you look at it, it was one choice. B'Elanna opening up and being vulnerable to her crew and accepting herself and not taking on the guilt. That was a choice. And once she made that choice, life is better again. So I feel like it's this simple choice, but it is so hard. And we get that dichotomy in this episode.
Well said, Amy. With that, Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Tinker, Tenor, Doctor, Spy.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Rand Hurl, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shadwell, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi. Barge of the Dead implies that there are other seafaring vessels of the dead. Let's hear about the Dinghy of the Dead. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.